Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Asteri Sofia Kairos. I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology, and thank you for joining me. I'll be taking you through the astrology of the week of the 28th of January that brings us through to the 4th of February 2026. As always, we're going Wednesday to Wednesday to honor our good friend, the god of astrology, who is Hermes. And when I look at this week, I notice that there are weeks when sometimes the astrology asks us for small adjustments, and sometimes there are weeks when we're asked to make a clean cut. And this week kind of belongs to the second one. We're going to see a Leo full moon, and we're also going to see Uranus making its final direct station in Taurus, and it's going to be on the fixed star Algol before it leaves Taurus for good. It's going to begin its direct move that's going to take it all the way through to Gemini. So this week is going to be a threshold, and we're just still recovering from last week when we had that big shift of Neptune into Aries. So just while we're adjusting to that, we've got this other shift of a second outer planet that's stationing direct. So it's yet another threshold. It's the last focus review, the handover of this Taurus house story that we've been working on for 8 years now. This area that Uranus has been quietly reshaping since 2018. And I'll walk you through the key dates, the clear expectations that Uranus might ask of us, and offer you some simple notes by modality, by your rising sign, so you can navigate this final handover with calmness and with clarity, knowing what to expect and knowing what you're carrying forward. So there's only 3 transits that we're looking at this week, even though they seem to be packing a punch. So on the 29th, we've got Mercury conjunct Venus. On the 1st of February, we've got the full moon in Leo at 13 degrees. And on the 3rd, we've got Uranus turning direct at 27 degrees, 27 minutes of Taurus. And even those numbers seem to demand our attention. 27, 27. So it might feel like this week is bringing a culmination, maybe a reckoning for us, or a release of some of the pressure that we've been working on with this heavy Aquarian sky, with this build-up of planets in Aquarius, this Leo full moon that's going to be demanding visibility, and this major outer planet stationing and preparing to close an 8-year chapter for us in Taurus. So it's a week that isn't going to be subtle, and it's asking us for clarity about what we stand for and what we value in Taurus and what can no longer stay frozen in place. So if we look first at this conjunction at 14 degrees, 1456, nearly 15, in this stellium of planets, it's hard to sometimes unpick because we've got the heavy hitting energy of Pluto. We've got Mars just separating away. Pluto's at 3. Mars is at 4, just starting to move away now from Pluto. We've got the Sun at 9 degrees. The Sun is in its exile or detriment in Aquarius. And then we've got the 2 peregrine planets, but they're personal planets to us. They signify our daily matters that we're concerned with. They're the planets that travel closest to the Earth and closest to the Sun and Moon, our luminaries. So they signify all the matters that we're most concerned with. Mercury signifies matters of the mind, how we communicate with each other, how we think, how we send messages from one to another. So I've got this image of a statue of Venus's first message. Mercury does symbolize the messenger and how messages are conveyed across borders, across boundaries. So as these 2 meet in an air sign, they're both familiar with air signs. Venus rules Libra, which is an air sign, and Mercury rules Gemini, an air sign. But this isn't the air sign that either of them rule, so they both lack that essential dignity here. They're under Saturn's rule, and Saturn can't see them in traditional astrology from Pisces. Saturn doesn't have a direct line of sight, and there isn't any exalted ruler of Aquarius. So we could say that these planets are unsupervised in Aquarius here. There might be some strange, unusual things happening during this time, things that are slightly out of the ordinary, especially as Aquarius is a future-facing sign anyway, and Saturn is the furthest out of the planets that are visible to the naked eye, and that means that it tends to go beyond the normal. The things that Venus and Mercury discuss now, this is their meeting when they set a new conversation about what their new cycle is going to be and what they signify for us. It might seed new conversations that define relationships. It might seed decisions that we make around values or alliances, money and priorities. Things may come to light that we begin to understand from now on. Or it might be words that cannot be unsaid, that get said now that we can't take back. Venus has a triplicity dignity here, as it's an air sign. And Saturn is in Pisces, where Venus is exalted. So Saturn is wanting to support her there. And really, Venus here is looking to make connections, and she's looking for mature compromise and long-term thinking. This is really about aligning your values with your future. There is some tension because this Mercury and Venus conjunction is square, in a whole sign square, to the Uranus in Taurus that's about to station, that of course is moving very slowly. And this could bring friction around our money and material security, around what feels stable in this steady and stable and slow moving sign of Taurus versus this faster moving, future facing sign of Aquarius, and our thoughts, and also around comfort versus integrity in this square that brings friction and asks us to take action. So it might be that if something feels shaky this week, it's likely because it needs to change, not because you've done anything wrong. But it's asking you to look and see how you might take action to resolve it. We might think of these days as a kind of council meeting in your Aquarian house, with all these planets come together and they've each got a slightly different agenda in mind, statements of intent and announcements. Maybe quiet deals are being made as they meet. And the minutes of this meeting for this transit, who said what and what was written down and what's been agreed to, are important because they'll be the witnesses. So you might get a feeling of the minutes of the meeting need to be taken about this transit. It might be important to know who said what. And that might be because of this square to Uranus stationing in Aquarius. Both Mercury and Venus are seeking rational, fair outcomes, and they're looking for the benefits for the collective. They're not being sentimental about it. And you may find yourself being more honest than normal about what you can and can't commit to in friendships, in your networks, in your collaborations, or your online spaces. You might be seeking to renegotiate the terms of a work contract or deciding what platforms you actually want to spend your time on. You could be clarifying your shared responsibilities in the groups that you work, rest, or play in. So this is how the mental frame is being set before we move into the full moon. And that's on the 1st of February, and it's happening at 13 degrees of Leo. And this happens in the second decan of Leo. And this decan is a Jupiter-ruled decan. It's often associated with victory, recognition, and confidence. And we see here a solitary moon in Leo, and it's opposite this crowded stellium of planets in Aquarius. We have Pluto at 3 degrees, Mars is now at 7 degrees, the Sun is at 13, Venus is at 19 degrees, and Mercury is at 21 degrees. So they're all starting to fan out a little bit from each other, all separating a little bit more, getting a little bit of space. We've got Pluto and Mars in the first decan of Aquarius, the Sun and Venus in the second decan of Aquarius, and Mercury in the third decan of Aquarius. So this brings tension with the moon in the second decan of Leo opposite, between personal expression and the collective, between the heart versus the system Aquarius represents. This is who I am in Leo versus this is what's expected of me. And we see this lynx cat with its crown of laurels, which is the symbol that Austin Coppock chose to represent this decan. And the Wild Ray Oracle is chosen to title this decan of Leo 2 as victory. So it is a decan where things go easily or are supported by Jupiter or expanded. And something might be coming fully into view now. Maybe a creative role, a leadership role, or a desire of yours that refuses to stay hidden. A full moon can be a time when things come to culmination, and they can be a time of high energy as well, when things are illuminated or come to a peak. And we see that the moon is making a whole sign trine to Neptune in Aries. And this is bringing vision and courage, that Aries naivety and brave willingness to be the pioneer, to act boldly even before everything's fully formed. The moon also squares by whole sign Uranus in Taurus, and that can act as a destabilizer. It can be a disruptor, disrupting finances, routines, either our physical or our emotional security. So the question that this full moon might be asking is, where do you want to be seen? And what are you willing to disrupt to claim that visibility? What do you want to do once you've won? And how will you carry that power you've asked for? The bound that the moon is in is held by Saturn. So we have magnification, confidence, but underneath this visibility, there's a sober awareness of limits, of time and responsibility. Our hearts want to step out and be seen and expressed, but Saturn is also asking, are you resourced enough for that? Are you willing to carry the weight that comes with this role? Emotionally, we might see that the full moon brings clarity around Leo topics in your chart: leadership, creative output, children, romance, public presence, situations where pride, performance, or maybe even entitlement have been quietly disrupting the energy may now be exposed in some way. You may realize that you've carried the emotional load for others. You might have been holding up the structure behind the scenes to allow somebody else to stand in the spotlight. Or you might notice where you've avoided carrying your share. You might prefer the applause over the actual responsibility. And this can also point us to another inner story. There can be a gap between the honors that we receive and how we actually feel inside. And this can also be a part of Leo about integrity. This audit, how does the recognition you're getting reflect your authentic work and your growth? Are you wearing an old costume that no longer fits you? You don't have to burn your bridges. You're just being invited to realign this outer role with your inner truth. So just take a brief pause here. Look at your own life and notice what's showing up for you at this time of the full moon. Notice if you're still playing any roles that you've already outgrown. Are you smiling and going through the motions when inside you've got a quiet scream? And that's the thread that this full moon is tugging on and asking you to really take some action and change that now. For the fire signs, if you're Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius rising, you're being really strongly energized here. You're being asked to take a creative risk or maybe step more fully into a role. It's important now to avoid performative drama or just seeking applause. Let your actions speak first and let the recognition just follow naturally. For the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, this full moon is a culmination of storylines that have been active since mid-2025. Themes of loyalty, control, and belonging, who actually holds power in the system, might be coming to a head. You might expect tension between your personal will and the expectations or structures of a group, an institution, or community. You may find yourself mentoring, stabilizing, or acting as a backbone for people who are already more visibly on stage. The crown of laurels here is as much about those who sustain the structure as those who wear the visible wreath. So some practical guidance for this full moon is to choose one area where you're ready to own your own role without unnecessary inflation. Name what you do well and also notice where your limits are. Notice any reactions that are coming from your ego, especially online or in public forums. Notice if you jump to defensiveness or make grand declarations or exaggerate your storytelling or have sudden flares of comparison. It's all information. The fixed signs are likely to encounter hard truths, maybe about control, loyalty, and how far an old script can actually stretch. For the cardinal signs, that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, you may be making decisions around family and career balance, public versus private boundaries, and the vocation-duty equation. For the mutable signs, you might be invited to support others' visibility now. You might learn a lot by watching how somebody else carries their own crown of laurels without needing to step into the center stage yourself yet. This full moon is marking the emotional crest of the week. We might be willing to look into the truth of the fire of Leo, but it's another thing to live it in the earth of Taurus. This is where the visibility of the full moon meets the non-negotiable reality of our physical bodies. And now we're going to shift gears a little and move into Uranus on Algol. Before we go into this part, join me please in taking a breath and just feel your body, your feet on the floor, the weight of your spine, the way your jaw is held. Are you holding any tension there? This section we're moving into now is belonging to your nervous system and those places in you that refuse to be quiet any longer. So it helps you to arrive in your body as you listen. So I'm going to break down now what this final handover looks like specifically for the fixed, cardinal, and mutable rising signs. So this is a visceral part of the week. On February the 3rd, Uranus stations direct at 27 degrees 27 minutes of Taurus, right on the fixed star Algol at 26 degrees. This is the last direct station that Uranus will make in Taurus before it completes this transit and begins its move through Gemini. It's the final handover moment for your Taurus house. The topics that Uranus has been shaking, disrupting, and awakening since 2018. Algol is traditionally tied to Medusa's head. Images of losing one's head, decapitation in myth, and of intense states. Historically, it has a difficult reputation, but there can be sharp breaks, emotional surges, or events that feel like a clean cut. But there's another layer here. There's always nuance. In the older stories, Medusa is also a figure of feminine creative force that refused to stay contained, shamed, or objectified. No matter how hard, no matter what was thrown at her, she fought back, found a way. When Uranus stations on Algol, it electrifies and intensifies what has been demonized, silenced, or kept on the shelf to make others comfortable. In fixed Earth, this can look very embodied. The sign of Taurus signifies the body, the land, food, money, intimacy with the material world. Uranus on Algol has coincided with sudden awakenings in these areas. A realization that your nervous system can't tolerate a particular working pattern anymore, or a breaking point around how you share resources. Maybe a decision about what you will and will not allow others to do with your time, your labor, your image, or your physical space. Because Uranus is stationing, their significations can be loud, but not necessarily fast. Sometimes nothing obvious happens on the exact day, but inside a non-negotiable shift has clicked. You may feel restless, wired, or uncharacteristically blunt. You may want to take risks. You may lose sleep, appetite, or your somatic responses can be erratic as your body processes the change. Give yourself a little bit more time. Give your system some extra margin. Eat simpler food. Allow yourself more water and rest. And look to take less voluntary disruption. If you can, avoid unnecessary financial or bodily risk on the day of the station on February the 3rd. This is because we don't want to overload an already charged circuit. We want to calm things down. Notice where clinging to comfort, aesthetics, or security is now feeling a little bit out of integrity or just not aligned or slightly uncomfortable even. Notice where you're still trying to hold on for someone else's benefit. This is where the cut is needed. This is the place where you need to put the old pattern down. For women or anyone living in that role, Algol often coincides with louder refusals. Places where bodies, images, or care work have been exploited may be speaking up now. That can look like saying no to unpaid labor, to reshaping a relationship with food or pleasure, or choosing a way of earning that honors your energy rather than draining it. For the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, you may be integrating the whole Uranus in Taurus transit now. Taurus risings have been working on identity, livelihood, body, and land, and they may have all been radically reconfigured. This station is about consolidating what is truly yours now. Leos might have seen public roles and reputation shift. Borrowed authority or outdated titles might be handed back. Scorpios could have transformed shared resources and entanglements. Survival-only contracts may finally end. Aquarians could have redefined home and belongings. You're choosing now where and with whom you truly root. For cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, this is about closing chapters in how you've pursued security. Aries has experimented with income and earning models. Work that keeps you in permanent survival mode is ready to go. Cancer has watched networks and aspirations shake up. You're clarifying which communities actually support you. Libra has dealt with partners' resources and crises. You're learning not to stabilize others' chaos at your own expense. Capricorn has reworked health, workload, and daily systems. It's time now to hand over tasks that no longer fit the person you're becoming. For the mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, you might be feeling this more as an inner turning. Gemini, you're preparing for Uranus's ingress into your sign. Subtle endings around identity, solitude, and behind the scenes are now underway. Virgo is seeing hidden work patterns, burnout cycles, and self-undoing around service becoming visible enough to change. Sagittarius has had faith, worldview, and legal or educational paths jolted. You're emerging from a long experiment with belief. Pisces has tried on public roles and ambitions. You're integrating which paths are actually sustainable for your spirit and your body. If you think back to the Mercury, Venus Council days and the Leo Crown of Laurel full moon, the words, agreements, and recognitions from earlier in the week set the mental and emotional frame. Uranus on Algol now delivers the uncompromising embodied handover of Taurus-related matters as we prepare to approach the Gemini years. If I had to look for a single thread to carry from this week, I would say 8 years of Uranus in Taurus are crystallizing into a clear question, and that's, where are you ready to make the clean cut to restore your own sovereignty? The Leo full moon is showing you what you're capable of holding. Uranus on Algol is showing you what you're no longer willing to hold at the expense of your body, your time, or your self-respect. So the handover we're seeing now seems to be more about stewardship. You are the only one who can decide how your energy, resources, and attention are best used. For this week, for the fixed signs, the handover is about control over outcomes. You're learning to lead, create, and belong without gripping so tightly that life can't move naturally and flow through you. For the cardinal signs, the handover is about over-identification with roles. Titles, duties, and structures are meant to serve your real life, not define the whole of who you are. The mutable signs, the handover is about old narratives, about what's possible. Your lived experience now matters more than the inherited scripts about your limits. So this week, let your checklist be simple and sovereign. One role that you're no longer performing, one story that you're ready now to retire. And then you can craft your crown of laurel, make your clean cut, all in the same movement. And so that concludes our week, and it also concludes the month that I've been hosting. If you want to continue following the arc of our story as Uranus moves towards Gemini and have further guidance from us, please do join us in February as Krista, who's a most wonderful storyteller, takes over the baton and will guide us through February. She'll be back with the astrology the 4th to the 10th of February. Please do tell me your Uranus in Taurus stories, what roles you're letting go of, what roles you're stepping into, and what house Taurus is for you in your chart. And if you've enjoyed this or found it helpful, please do let me know what you've enjoyed. We love to hear your stories. I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology. Please do support Asteri Sofia Kairos. We're a collective of astrologers. None of us have a team behind us. We're all working for the love of astrology, bringing this information to you just in order to share our knowledge, and we hope that it's of help to you and of some use to you. So thank you for joining us. Please do like, subscribe. I know you've probably heard it before, but it really does help a small channel to grow, and that is what we hope for. Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.